Hey YouTube, here's Heiko down in my garage. Today we're going to look at compression test and leak check. We're going to take care of those two tests on my R90/6, but it's really applicable for any internal combustion engine. If you follow a certain procedure, if you warm up the engine if it's possible, you will get better results, more accurate results. If it's an engine that maybe doesn't run and you just want to do a compression check or a leak check to determine the condition of the internals of the motor, you can squirt a little bit of some oil down the spark plug holes. That usually improves the compression a little bit. I'll just take you along, show you how I do it, and then you can take the information and apply it to your own procedure. Okay, let's go over to my motorcycle and I show you the tools that we're going to be using. The whole beauty of Harbor Freight shopping: compression tester, leak down tester. And this is just lying around. Don't worry about it. First, we're going to do a compression test, which pretty much only measures the compression the engine is producing while you're cranking it. To do that, you got to do a few things. First of all, you got to warm up your engine if you can. Let me put you on a stand. Then, zoom out, come on. There you go. Then you got to open up the throttle all the way, or here in my case, I just took the carbs off. Carb means intake is all the way open. My ignition system is electronic. You never want to run or crank an engine with the ignition system connected and functioning without grounding it. So the spark plug is grounded as if it is mounted inside the cylinder. So the spark plug is still going to be sparking, but you never just want to leave it like this, because then you're overloading the ignition coils. Some of the electronics don't like it, and you might burn up your coils or your ignition system. So both spark plugs are out. Both cylinders have the carburetor removed. It's just hanging here on the cables. Nothing is going to happen to it. Now we're going to install the compression tester. And the compression tester comes with a bunch of adapters. You got to find the one that fits into your spark plug hole. There's a Schrader valve here at the end of this adapter that kind of lets the pressure come in but not escape, so you get a pressure reading at the end. Come on now. Go in there. Oh, is this the wrong one? Gotta check if it's the same thread. It should go in. I am just... There we go. That's better. All right, you just screw that in. Make sure before you remove your spark plug, you take some compressed air and blow around your spark plug to make sure there's no dirt, grime, or dust lying around that's then going to fall into your combustion chamber. Then you take your gauge. This also has some sort of quick disconnect. You can check this gauge by just putting compressed air in here and then compare the pressure reading on here with the pressure reading on your compressor to kind of figure out how accurate this gauge is. So in my case here, engine, like I said, is still nice and warm. You guys can see the needle, and you'll give it a few cranks. I would say 5 or 6. Like I said, the intake is all the way open. There's no obstruction. That's what you need. And both spark plugs are out here in my case. That makes the engine crank a little easier. And now we're just going to go for it. So this is the right side cylinder. We're going to crank it now. Ready? So, oh, that's not much. That's 90 psi, my friends. That is not much. That is pretty disappointing. Even though I wrote it and warmed it up, I'm surprised that it's even running that well as it is. 90 psi. Oh my goodness. So I might actually have some issues here with my cylinders and pistons. I'm gonna give it some Marble Mystery Oil in the cylinder and see if that does anything. I always have a little can with Marble Mystery Oil sitting around because I use it as oil for my air tools. So just some oil. Let's do it one more time. Almost fell down. It's not good. Yeah, I saw 110, but ultimately it's sitting at 100. You never know exactly how accurate those cheap gauges are. I compared it to my compressor, but then I don't know exactly how accurate the compressor gauge is. Let's do the other side. Oops, sorry guys. So now the other side, like I said, you just gotta make sure you let your ignition system work properly. Okay, go in there. Yeah, there's an O-ring at the bottom of this adapter that goes in here. So you really don't have to crank it down really hard. All right, here's the gauge again. And let's crank. That's around 100. That's not great either. I'm not very happy with this. 100 PSI on a running engine isn't really very much. Let's give it a little squirt of oil as well. I'm surprised it runs as well as it does with such low compression. Let's see what the leak test will tell us. All right, ready? Let's do it again. No, that didn't increase anything. It's still at 100. Not happy. I mean, they are at least consistent. And I bet if I would have rode it a little longer, maybe we would have a little bit higher compression. But so now the next step is doing a leak down test. For that, you don't need a cranking engine anymore. For that, we are now going to put one of the two cylinders in top dead center. Here's my timing hole. Take the cover off. I have the rear wheel off the ground so I can spin it. Put it in some gear. A higher gear is preferred. And now I'm going to bump the rear wheel until in my timing hole the OT mark shows up. And then I know that, oh, we're almost there. Oh, we just went past it. Okay, so now we know that one of the two cylinders is at top dead center. We don't know which one, but we're going to find out in a second. So we take our leak down tester, which pretty much, take a look at this here, is a combination of a pressure gauge and some sort of cylinder leakage gauge, which gives you a leakage in percentage. And then you also have a adjuster knob here, a quick disconnect fitting for air. We're gonna have to hook up my compressed air line, and the same kind of hose with a adapter. There are a bunch of different adapters that come with that fit into different size spark plug holes. This one here doesn't have a Schrader valve at the end. If you get a cheap one, mine had a Schrader valve in it, you need to take that out or else your leak down test will not work. So you just screw that in here. We're just going to start here with this cylinder. We might find out that this one is not at the compression stroke. And oh yeah, before we put pressure to the cylinder to test the leak down, we first have to calibrate our tester here. So you take your tester, you hook up your compressed air, and our compressor sits at about 70 psi, and that's perfectly acceptable. So we hook it up to compressed air, and then we're gonna open up our adjuster here. You have to pull it out, and then you open it up until the leakage needle. Oh, I remember. We have a leakage connector here. Is it not leaking anymore? It's still leaking. Something is leaking in here. Oh, it was just loose. Okay, the end was coming loose. Okay. What is going on here? So this end here is loose. That's the only leakage that we have. So I tighten it up and we're good. All right, let's get back to it. You take your air hose connected to your leak down tester. You have nothing hooked up to the other end, and you're just using your adjuster down here to bring your needle on the leakage gauge, the one on the right, to the 0 mark right there. Like right there. If you have to go back to lower it, like bring it the other direction, you have to make sure that you're not messing up the adjustment here. Okay, so now we're roughly at 0. So now we calibrated this gauge to 0 leakage. There is no leakage here on this end. Now we're going to hook it up to our lead that's going to the cylinder. And if we're correct and this cylinder is on top dead center, there's going to be some leakage. You either get leakage out of the intake, the exhaust, or through your crankcase, which means blow by the piston rings. And that's probably going to be most likely the case here in this motorcycle. So let's put it here so you guys can see. I'm going to hook up my line here, and we're going to hear some hissing. There's some hissing. It's only giving us like very low reading, so maybe 5% leakage. And I can hear the leakage coming out of the right side air intake on the other side. Let me show you where that is, what that is. Hear the hissing? It's coming out of the right side air intake. That's where the crankcase breather is blowing into. Here's my finger is going into the crankcase breather. So we have a slight blow by the piston rings, but it's very low. It's really only at about 5%, which is very good. I just wonder why we have such low compression. With those old motorcycles, you never know. People might have put it together with the wrong cylinder base gasket or cylinder head gasket and created a situation of low compression. It doesn't seem to be a problem with the valves, because we have absolutely no blow-by coming out the intake. If you would have blow-by the exhaust valve, you would have air blowing out of your muffler, and I cannot hear that, confirm that either. So the only blow-by we have currently is out of the crankcase, or past the piston rings. We're going to verify our measurements here. We're going to turn this knob all the way counterclockwise, turn it off. We're going to bring it back up to 0, and then redo this entire test. Just got to work slow, work your way up till the needle is perfectly centered over the 0, like right there. And then push in this knob here at the bottom so that, oh, now it already changed, dang it. You always want to work up your way, this direction. Push the knob in where it's 0. We're past the 0 again. Come on now. I'm always too quick. So we're going to stop a smidge before 0, like right there. Every time I push the knob in, it goes up 1%. So now we're really at 0. Connect this here. Yeah, maybe we have 12%. That's why I wanted to verify the measurements. So we have about a 12% blow-by, and it really sounds like it's only piston rings. It's not intake or exhaust valve at all. So now we have done one cylinder. We know that our compression is relatively low. But we know that our leak down test is pretty good. Now we're going to go over to the other side, take everything with us. We need to turn the engine 360 degrees by using the rear wheel to put the second cylinder into top dead center. So while you guys wait here, here's the gauge. I'll put our adapter in here already, right there. I'll bump the engine over. So you pretty much just spin the engine 360 degrees. You're turning your flywheel 360 degrees and your crankshaft to bring the other engine to top dead center with both valves closed in the compression stroke. All right, we're getting there. All right, come on. What is it? Did I miss it? Did I go past it already? Oh, yeah. And here's the OT mark. All right, so now this cylinder should be at top dead center. So to start the test again, we pull this knob down, turn it all the way counterclockwise. This is closed now. We're now going to hook up our airline. Like so. Then we're going to increase the air pressure and calibrate this to 0. And you got to work your way up slowly. So I'm going to stop a little before 0, because every time I push this knob in, there, it's too far. So then you always have to go back a little bit and then work your way up again. No, not enough. Zero, perfect. So calibrate it. If I didn't accidentally spin it 2 turns, we should be at top dead center right now. No, I turned it twice. I was too quick, so I guess I have to turn it again. Well, I guess I'll be right back. All right, let's recalibrate this whole thing. Too far. Always go back and then work your way back up to the 0 mark. Oh, it's always a little too far. All right, we're at 0. Now we should be at top dead center. Hook it up. And we have about 10% leakage. Nothing coming out of the intake. It's just blowing out of the crankcase breather again. So that means it's going past the pistons. So let's disconnect this. What have we done? We have done a compression test on both cylinders. We know that the compression is rather low. We were on both cylinders around the 100, 110 psi mark. There is a manufacturer's specs that tell you what the new compression of a engine should be. If you're significantly lower than what the manufacturer's specs are, you can assume that your motor is worn or that it wasn't assembled correctly. Because if someone put too many gaskets or too thick of a gasket at the base and at the divide between the cylinder and the piston, the cylinder head, will lower the compression of the engine, and that can affect measurements as well. Then if you want to go a step further and you're going to do a leak down test, which will specifically tell you where that leakage, where that compression is leaking away, either through the exhaust valve into the exhaust, intake valve into the out the intake, or past the piston rings into the crankcase. If you have an engine that is water cooled, you could also have air bubbles coming into your cooling system because the cylinder head gasket has a leak. Or here in this case, we could literally have a leakage between the cylinder and the cylinder head and air blowing out the gasket. That's also very possible. So I'm not panicking quite yet. I'm not thinking of, oh, I need to buy some new pistons and then get my cylinder honed, drilled and honed or machined, and then put it back together. So I'm not going to go there quite yet. I know that my engine has a little bit of some pushrod tube leakage going on. So the top end needs a reseal anyways. And when I do that top end reseal, I will measure the cylinder against the piston, making sure that those parts are still within spec. Then the piston is going to get a set of new rings, all new gaskets, and then we're going to do this again. So, I mean, of course, if the piston is worn or the cylinder is worn to the point where we're not within spec, then I need to come up with another solution. An oversized piston, get it honed, machined to the oversized piston, and then reassemble. But it at least tells us that the valves are closing properly, so we don't have any valve leakage. And the blow-by that we have past the piston at a 10% rate is really not that bad. I'm just a little concerned why my compression is so low. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, guys, so we did compression test and leak down test. Like I said, the compression test is not quite as complicated to do. The compression tester really only measures a pressure that is produced by your own piston going up and down in your own combustion chamber. The leak down test literally tells you where you have any kind of problems, where you have kind of leakage, and then you can go from there. It's a better diagnostic tool than a compression test. A compression test is really only comparing cylinders to each other and kind of giving you an idea, but it really doesn't tell you what's wrong, really. So showed you those tools. They're both pretty cheap. You know, I bought mine at Harbor Freight. You just got to check those gauges. When your compressor says you have 100 psi in your tank, you can pressurize the compression tester and see if it also shows 100 psi or somewhere near that. You can do the same with a leak down tester as well, just to check. And mine worked pretty well. And with the information that I now gained during the compression test and the leak down test, I can now continue my troubleshooting, my diagnostic once the riding season is over. And I'm going to take it apart, and then we're going to measure the piston and the cylinder. I hope this helps someone, and if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.